Hello and welcome to this week's myNewsWrap. This is a bit of a special edition because I have to pre-record this session, so no live stream this week, because I'm attending a training tomorrow, so yeah. I have to choose this workaround. Now, let's get to the news of the last week that crossed my path. To be honest, as in the last weeks, from the SAP side of the house, there wasn't too much information, too much news that came across. As I already mentioned quite some times, I think that this is simply due to TechEd, and SAP is kind of holding back the interesting news, but we will see in, I think, 2 weeks what's new on the plate. Hope to have a book of news there that I can present you then. Now, nevertheless, there are a few news that despite of that fact came across my path. So first of all, let's start with the cloud application programming model, especially the kind of community contributions to this model via one of the well-known contributors, Volker Busek, who made us aware of that the CDS PostgreSQL extension, or how you would call it, will now also have a kind of early version support for Draft. So that's quite interesting. So because then it's really getting more and more feature complete compared to the HANA-based implementation. So quite cool. Let's see what happens at TechEd all around that cloud application programming model thingy. Next, also something from the area of cloud application programming model that I want to make you aware of. There is now one book that came out in German in the SAP Press or Rheinberg publishing area that covers basically application development on the SAP Cloud Platform with focus on SAP Cloud Application Programming Model. I also had a look at the table of content that's available here. It's quite, from my perspective, quite rounded up. So there are all the aspects around application development, application deployment covered. Well, I'm a quick bit, undecided about such books. I mean, I think they are a cool way or a nice way to get started, but the question is, how long is their content valid? Because the area of cloud application programming model is still quite young and is still quite evolving. So yeah, let's see how long this book will last and when a new version is available. But if you're starting now, I think that's a fair way to get into the topic. Then I also have a really nice blog by Marco Dorn, and then of course of the Kyma area, because Marco Dorn is Mr. Kyma, about triggering Kyma's APIs secured via OAuth 2 from the SAP Cloud Platform Open Connectors. So now the focus is really on integration area. So the basic flow is depicted here on the blog that I referenced and that you can find in the show notes. Starting from an event that is received within the Open Connector on SAP Cloud Platform. The Open Connector triggers some event and then calls an API in Kyma. So I think that's quite a real-life scenario, or at least a blueprint for a real-life scenario that might cross our paths in context of extending applications more and more in the future. Really nice write-up. Highly recommended. And then last news from the pure SAP area, kind of something that I think is of interest, blog by Oliver Kohl on the OpenSIT, OpenSIT contribution that he made. If you have well attended SAP Insight tracks, you might be aware of that platform where all the talks are kind of well put in there in order for later watching them, and there is kind of a real platform behind that. And now Oliver decided to make that let's say platform open source, and yeah, he's waiting for contributions. So I think that's really nice move, and I think that's also quite interesting if you are looking for a platform that does the same like that. It's also really interesting personal write-up how things came together. So yeah, take a look at it. Now let's switch to the Microsoft side of the house. There we have one more general information about data security and data privacy. I mean, if you are around the area of cloud in general, there is currently quite some insecurity or uncertainty, I have to say, with respect to data privacy, with respect to GDPR, with respect to the privacy shield thingy. And well, it's not my home turf. I think it's a lot of legal stuff going on there behind the scenes that I don't even try to understand, to be honest. But there are now quite some reactions, and as I'm more or less Microsoft fanboy, I have referenced here one blog with respect to one further response by Microsoft to the topic titled "New Steps to Defend Your Data," that describes how Microsoft tackles that topic, how or if your data is made accessible, what you can do in order to make it even more secure. There are a lot of links within the blog, so if you are or if you have touch points in that area, I would recommend to read that blog. Then, well, nothing more from a general perspective, but quite some stuff from Azure Functions perspective. One point that I want to highlight is a contribution in the Azure Tips and Tricks area, which is a GitHub repo of Microsoft where there are a lot of different tips and tricks all around Azure. We are now at number 296. So if you in general are looking for some tips and tricks, this is a quite good place. And now specifically for Azure Functions and Azure Functions and databases. So what databases should you use when you're using Azure Functions? And there is a quite crisp description. First of all, how to glue those things together, functions and databases, and then what databases are supported for Azure Functions out of the box, so with a explicit binding support, and what type of data do they contain, and so on and so forth. So yeah, crisp read. If you have to deal with a question around that, database, Azure Functions, what do you use, what combination is the best, that's worth a look. Then kind of going in the same direction but different is a blog about Azure Durable Entities. So the newest contribution to the Azure Durable extension and what they are good for, because with durable entities or stateful entities, there are, or you run into the, you might run into the wrong direction when you're using them. So you might misuse them in some scenarios. So this blog here highlights what they are not good for. And one thing is databases, because Azure durable entities store data, and they indeed can be abused as kind of a database, but that's in no sense the way they are intended to work. And there are also the points what they are good for to use. So for example, IoT offline detection, state machine, or circuit breaker implementation. So that's a really helpful block if you are dealing with durable entities from my perspective. Then from the serverless area, from the low-code area, namely Azure Logic Apps, there is also one news I want to highlight, and that's around a new format for Logic Apps, for news around Logic Apps. Look behind the scenes, and that's Logic Apps Talk. That's a new format that's available on YouTube. The first episode is out there, which covers the area of the new runtime that's available for Azure Logic Apps. Difficult word. And well, I think that's really interesting. However, I don't know how you are, but I'm already running out of time with respect to all the things that one could watch and that are interesting. But if you are dealing with Logic Apps, if you're working with them, I think valuable to take a look at this new format. Then from another area of the Microsoft part of the house is Power Apps that currently heavily pushed, especially also in the area of SAP and Microsoft integration. There is now a new layout container available in the Canvas apps, and the blog post that I referenced and that I want to draw your attention to is with these new layout containers, you have an easier approach to make responsive apps. So that's kind of something, if you have been working with Logic Apps, with Power Apps, then there are some, let's say pitfalls with respect to responsiveness, well, this new container layout makes your life easier in that area. Okay, then let's switch to another contribution of Microsoft to the open source world, namely Dapper. There is one hands-on, not published by Microsoft, but by someone from the community, and it's a hands-on lab about Dapper with a step-by-step guide on the domain of, let's say, traffic control, speed control, and how to build software in order to model that, making use of Dapper. There is quite a nice README attached to this GitHub repo where the lab is in, also highlighting how the sequence flow is, and where Dapper comes into play in order to model the end-to-end scenario. So I think if you want to make your hands dirty with Dapper, then that's a really nice way how to start, beside the, of course, official Dapper hands-on labs that are not that let's say self-contained with respect to the scenario. They are more focusing on technical aspects, and this is not really something that focuses on a real-life scenario. Okay, so then let's switch to the area or the universe between SAP and Microsoft, bringing those two worlds together. Here I want to highlight one post of Roman Broich in LinkedIn, who teases an expert series on SAP and Azure that is targeting especially partners of Microsoft and probably SAP. And there is one talk of the one and only Martin Pankratz on the 15th of December about combining Power Platform with the SAP Cloud Platform. So as usual, or as I would expect, this will be really a super high quality content by Martin. So this is something that you should watch out and attend if it's possible for you, because that's definitely worth it. Okay, then as we already have Martin Pankratz mentioned here, I also want to mention another blog post by him that came out this week again, and also I'm repeating me here, but I really like his blogs. I love his blogs because there are super high quality content from real life scenarios, and this one is now all about iFlows and failover scenarios for iFlows, because well, when you look at SAP on Azure and the reference architectures around SAP on Azure, you will see that there are quite some examples with respect to failover, with respect to redundancy, disaster recovery, and so on and so forth. Now he kind of widens the scope and also takes the cloud platform integration runtime into the game. And this extensive blog then shows you how you can well deal with disaster recovery in the context of the cloud platform integration runtime. That's really quite interesting, also answering a lot of questions with respect to active passive scenarios, with respect to keeping different CPI tenants in sync when you're dealing with disaster recovery, and so on and so forth. So that's really, again, as usual, super high quality content. If you are around that area, take a look at it. It's definitely worth it. Now, that's already it from the, let's say, news part on the world in between SAP and Microsoft. Some quite nice scenarios, how to deal with that stuff. So still, from my perspective, one of the interesting and very vibrant areas. Of course, Azure Functions are much more interesting, but combining Azure Functions with SAP is then really the top of the top. No, just kidding. I really think there are a lot of valuable contributions, especially from the Microsoft advocates or cloud solution architects or whatsoever, that are really delivering high quality content in that area. Now, concerning upcoming events and learnings, I want to draw your attention to two things. One is the Azure Advocates Seasons of Serverless that started this week, and it's kind of let's say Advent of Codes or 25 days of serverless thingy that is always there when it comes to holiday season. And this is now a challenge, a weekly challenge. I think it's seven parts, if I'm not mistaken. And well, it's all around solving challenges with serverless offerings on Azure. So this week is the first week, so you can still contribute. And I think on Monday the second week starts, and it's, as far as I understood up to now, all about cooking. But let's see what comes next week. But if you're interested in that, I think it's really a cool way to code around a bit and learn new things. And then, of course, SAP TechEd, 2 weeks away. If you still are working on your agenda, there is another blog that I want to highlight by Ulrike Fempel from the open source office of Microsoft, of SAP. And she brought out a blog about sessions at SAP TechEd, all around open source. So of course there is something about Kyma, there is something about Gardener, which I think is also quite interesting, and of course there are some sessions all around OpenUI5. So if you are kind of interested in the open source activities of SAP and what they do, I think that blog guides you to the right sessions. Okay, so we're nearly at the end of this session. I have one more thing up the sleeve, so to say, with respect to developer productivity, kind of. So if you, like me, following, for example, Scott Henselman on Twitter or so, then you will have seen that there are quite some artistic, let's say, designs of Windows Terminal that are used there, and I always ask myself how that is done, and that's why I have linked now the Microsoft documentation for configuring your terminal. For example, how to bring in background images and how to align them, or how to put them in the right area of your terminal. So if you want to customize your Windows terminal to an artistic level, then this customization settings description is the right place for you. Okay, with that, I have everything told around the news that came across my path this week. I hope I could present you some unknown news and some new stuff. I hope you enjoyed it, and well, see you next week. Until then, bye.